just pay attention to that. Like I said, I first made it with the tri-colored coleslaw. Those are 14-ounce bags, but the Angel Slaw is only 10-ounce, so I had to readjust that because, of course, you never know what they're going to have the day you want to go buy things, so you just go with the punches. Of course, then, you can see it calls for a green pepper and a white onion, white or yellow onion, and I always like to use the white. And that's probably the hardest thing, is because that just takes the time to dice everything up. So I just diced up everything, the green pepper really small, and once the onion's really thin, and then I just cut those into small pieces. That was the hardest thing for this recipe, because then all you do, once you get all that in a bowl, then you just take everything else and put it in a little pan on the oven, and you can see it's a half a cup of apple cider vinegar, half a cup of oil, a third of a cup of white sugar. You just stirred all that in until the sugar, dissolved. Then added celery seed, salt, and pepper. And once that's all dissolved, and pour it in, and you just pour it over the coleslaw and the vegetables hot, and just let it cool down and just throw it in the fridge. So simple. And then the key here for this one is making sure that it sits for 24 hours so that it gets all the flavor in it. So it's really good. I made it a few weeks ago. My husband's like, I like it, but I still prefer mayonnaise. I said, well, that's all right. You're just my tester for today. So it's just nice to have an option if you're going to be outside and you just don't want to do it that mayonnaise base. So that was my whole purpose with that one. So that was a simple recipe. The other one is a family favorite. My mother-in-law introduced it to me, and it's just a nice way for grapes. This one is a little bit more time consuming just because you take the time to, peel. Actually, you have the grapes, and then you're just taking them off the stem. You want to make sure that the grapes aren't too squishy, because if they are, I don't use them. Take them off the stem, put them in the strainer to rinse off, then you have to pat them dry. So I just kind of let them sit and take their time. This one, I use 3 pounds of red grapes, 3 pounds of green grapes. If you have a preference and you like only one over the other, use whatever variation you want with it. It just makes it more colorful. While those are drying, I just take the rest of the things I'm going to put into the salad, and it's really simple. It's cream cheese, 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. So I kind of take that out of the refrigerator once I'm working on the grapes, so it has time just to soften. It just makes it easier to mix in with the cream cheese. You can see that calls for white sugar as well, a little bit of vanilla. Mix that all up. Then once your grapes are dry, you're ready to put them in. I just stuck them in the bowl. You do your mixture, and then you top it off with pecans and brown sugar. Now, you can always add more brown sugar and more pecans. It's just like a general mixture, and we're ones that once we use it, if there's any left over, we add more brown sugar and pecans to the top, because that's all the stuff that gets eaten right away, and that's what everybody likes. So feel free to add more and do whatever you need to do. But hopefully, those are just 2 nice recipes for barbecues or family get-togethers that are fairly simple to make. Just pull them out of the refrigerator. It's nice because you can make them ahead of time. They can sit. You can wait. I would wait and do the brown sugar. Like I added it this morning, and it's already kind of soaked in. So you can wait until right before you serve it, to add the pecan pieces and brown sugar. And like I said, you can never have too much brown sugar. At least that's what my husband tells me. So any questions on either of those recipes for me? Yes?
I noticed I'm new, sorry.
No, you're fine.
You don't have approximate or servings.
Correct.
Even an estimate.
I don't. I know, I really don't. And that's a valid point. As we've grown, because I've made them for family, it's always been enough. I try to make things that are going to serve
a crowd.
Yeah, and so it'll just depend. As we've gotten bigger and bigger here, sometimes I'll make double batches, but for this one I didn't, because I figured we've been very fortunate because so many people have been bringing things in, And so it gives everybody that opportunity to just taste it to see if it's something they like. But I will tell, I mean, this easily, I make this, the grape salad, for just like 4. My husband, I could make this and my husband will eat this. This will be his snack for like 5 days. And he's happy. He was so upset with me this morning. He's like, you're not leaving any? And I said, no. I said, if there's leftovers, I'll bring it home. But if I'm not, I'll make you your own batch. I mean, he was beside himself. It's like, relax. Don't even go there.
Are you doing the regular brown sugar or dark brown?
I just use the light brown sugar that we have. I mean, you can. I think it's preference to whatever you prefer. So, like I said, yeah, exactly. That's me. And I added a little bit more vanilla than it calls for, just because I like the little coloring. So it's not so stark white. It just adds that, and I like the taste of it. So, and when you use Spencer's vanilla that he has mentioned, makes it really good. So. Any other question? Great questions. So no, I'm sorry, I don't have an estimate.
It's okay.
Just whatever. And you can make, what's nice here is you could easily double it, or if you have another half bar of cream cheese, just add, if you want more of the,
Stretch it.
yeah, stretch and do whatever you want. And you can, some people, I thinned it down if I don't, grapes are really high, and that's one thing. I tend not to make this if it's super expensive, like if grapes are $3 a pound or whatever. When they're cheaper, that's when I'll tend to make it for them.
Do you toast the pecans?
I have not done that, but that would be good.
$1.57 and $1.59.
Okay, see, that's always a bonus. So, okay, so yes, that's it. That's what this time of year it's really good because the grapes have been, they tend to be cheaper at this point. So,
For those of you who are new here, so for today I made some rolls. Typically with the barbecue, you're going to have, today we've got pulled pork. But often you're actually going to have hamburgers, hot dogs, those kind of things. You can always go to the store and buy some. They're cheap. Everybody generally likes the ones you can get from the store. But if you want to do something a little bit special, I've got a couple of things that you can try on your own sometime. So on pages 4 and 5, you'll see there's 2 recipes. So the one on the right is just called burger buns. It's basically just a white dough mix, pretty much similar to what you would make for making bread at home. There's nothing really significantly different there. It's just another variation of a common bread recipe. So I've got that on page 5. On page 4, that's the one that's going to be a little bit more interesting and the one that some of you might not have tried before, and those are called pretzel roll buns. So basically you're taking a pretzel recipe, forming it into a ball instead of the nice pretty pretzel shape, and using that for your hamburgers. They're popular in restaurants for the last couple of decades, so you've probably had one at a restaurant sometime. You can also do the same thing at potlucks and barbecues. So if you're interested, I'll show you what we've got here. So you can definitely see a difference between the two. Ones on the left are the white dough bread. Ones on the right are the pretzels. And they get that color because of one special step that you do when you're making pretzels. You'll make the dough like regular, and if you compare the two, you'll see there's some variations between the two dough recipes themselves, but nothing significant. So with breads, you'll find all kinds of variations in bread. So this is just another variation of a bread. So the big difference is when your dough is already risen and you've shaped it into your ball shape or your bun shape, then you're going to boil up some water, add about a half a cup of baking powder into the bath. Baking soda. I've got baking soda. Is that what I used? Yes, thank you very much. Want to make sure I used the right one last night. All right, so you're going to add quite a bit of baking soda. Bring that to a boil. You don't have to leave it at a boil the entire time. You're not really cooking the dough inside the water. So if it's just really hot and if it's gone off a boil already, that's okay. You're just going to kind of blanch it, similar to what they do with bagels. You're going to put it in there I typically throw it in for about 15 seconds on one side, roll it over for another 15 seconds on the other side, just to give that outer surface a nice different texture and flavor because of all of that baking soda in the water. So I'll spoon them out, put them on my wire rack, let them sit there for a bit. I'll do about 3 or 4 at a time because even though I don't care about the water getting too low in temperature, I don't want it to get room temperature. So I'll do a handful at a time, put them on my cooling rack, take some salt. Almost every pretzel recipe you see calls for coarse salt, and the reason they do that is mostly for a visual look, also for a little bit of texture, and a lot of chefs will use coarse salt because it's easier to see the flakes that they put on so they know how much salt they put on. I typically just go with any kind of sea salt. I don't go out and buy the expensive pretzel salt when I'm making pretzels at home. So it's your choice, just use whatever you want. If you are going to use the finer grained salt, just make sure you're only grabbing a pinch. I will pour a bit in my hand, grab a pinch and sprinkle it on them, and then do that. Another technique that you'll see on the cooking shows a lot is they will kind of sprinkle it way up above. One, it looks cool. Anybody who's watching you is going to say, ooh, there's a professional chef. Number two, it gives you a chance to spread the salt out a little bit so it doesn't just pile up in one clump on whatever you're sprinkling. So if you're going to use the fine salt like I did today, make sure you don't put on too much. It's going to be a little hard to see because it is fine salt, so mostly look at it when you're grabbing it and feel how much you have in your fingers when you're sprinkling it on. Another thing I like to do when I'm making my pretzels is put on less salt than the pretzel shop would. Not really because of a health concern, mostly just for a taste. I typically like it with a little bit less salt, especially if I'm going to use it as a bun. I don't want all that salt to ruin whatever it is I'm putting inside the bun.
All right, so one of the things that when I was doing some research for the barbecues and things, it seems like mac and cheese is one of the big side dishes that you have. So I decided to go ahead and do that. And I started doing some research to see, when I was up north, we had macaroni and cheese at obviously different events, but it was very oily. I thought, when I was a little kid, I thought all the mac and cheese was supposed to be like this greasy, oily, you know, it's just, that's the only ways I had it. So I was like, okay, and then I came down here once, I was like, oh, this is different. So, thinking about, I like the flavor of that other version I had up north, but in the same sense, didn't want, you know, this much grease laying on top. So, this is what we kind of came up with, is on page 7. We've got, the first part of it is if you want to, like the 4 slices of sandwich bread and unsalted butter, that's if you want to make your own breadcrumbs. Spencer was here early in the morning. Spencer does not do early mornings. So we went with panko. I went with a half a cup of panko and a half a cup of Parmesan cheese. Mixed it together and threw a couple tablespoons of, I think it was olive oil or neutral oil, and just so it was somewhat damp, threw it on there at the last half hour, and that was that. So, obviously the macaroni, the flour, and now this recipe uses evaporated milk because evaporated milk has had a lot of the water removed from it. The other thing I was thinking about with macaroni and cheese is I like when you scoop into it, it holds together, just doesn't start running to Texas. So I'm like, okay, so that's another reason why we use that. The hot sauce, dry mustard, onion powder, garlic powder. You can, of course, adjust the seasonings to your liking. So 8 ounces of sharp cheddar cheese, grated. 8 ounces of Velveeta. This is going to be basically your emulsifier. And then the Monterey Jack is also another emulsifier. So, you want everything at room temp when you go to make this. That'll help, especially when you go to melt all the cheeses. Have you ever made macaroni and cheese and it's like the cheese is kind of gritty? So if you have, that means when you've got your pot on the stove and you got the heat on and you're trying to melt it, it's basically the cheddar cheese is trying to separate. So if you take it off the heat, give it a second, and then put your cheese in. Like for example, I put the Velveeta in and I stirred it. If you need some stirring, practice, this is a great recipe. So you're going to stir the Velveeta, and then I waited for that to basically get completely melted, and then I threw in the Monterey Jack, let that melt, and then lastly I put in the sharp cheddar cheese and let that melt. The other thing that's in the instructions is when you go to make this, when you boil your pasta, hold back a half a cup of the pasta water because it has starch in it. Starch is going to help bind everything together. Now, I'm all about make ahead if I can to make life easy. So what I actually did is Thursday night, I boiled the pasta. And then I added a little bit of oil to it, like a couple of tablespoons, just so when I pulled it out of the fridge, it wasn't like this big ball of mess. So I went ahead and pre-shredded all the cheese. Don't buy the stuff that's pre-shredded in the bag. It's got cellulose in it. It's made to not clump. In this case, you want it to melt, so take the block and take a few minutes and just grate it. So I went ahead and grated everything, and then I went ahead and put it on a platter and just saran wrapped the whole thing, threw it all in the fridge. Same thing with the pasta water. So then the next night when I was ready to actually put everything together, I brought everything out, let it all get up to room temperature. I basically made the cheese sauce, stirred in the macaroni, stuck it in here, and then put it back in the fridge. So this morning, before you guys got here, we threw it in the oven. So if you're going to do it all in one shot, you probably only need to bake it about an hour. But if you're going to do it from the fridge, like I did it 90 minutes covered with foil at 350, and then pull the foil off, put your breadcrumb on for another half an hour. And this is what we get. Oh, the other thing I ran into, this is kind of important. If you have a regular 9x13 pan that's got sides on it like this, it won't fit. Luckily, I had a 9x13 with like 3-inch sides on it, so it does fit. So that's another thing, find a taller dish that you might have. So that's the macaroni and cheese. The other thing that's on page 6, I didn't bring any of this with us today, but if anybody's looking for like a general barbecue rub, I've made this a lot. You can of course change out different things, but might be a good place to start for you. I really like it on, like I'll take like a piece of boneless, skinless chicken breast, I pound it flat. This is going to sound a little disgusting, but it works excellent. Take a little bit of mayonnaise. Put mayonnaise on your chicken. You don't need a lot. Shake it all on there. It's going to bind that to the chicken, and plus it's also going to make it non-stick on your grill. Because what's mayonnaise? It's eggs and oil, right? So that actually works pretty well. And it doesn't taste like mayonnaise when you go to eat it. Yeah, no, yeah. So you're safe there.
Even keeps the meat moist. It seals the juices in.
Exactly, yep. So that will definitely help. So anyway, so you just mix all that together and then throw in an airtight container. When we've smoked brisket and pork butt, things like that, we've used it on all of that and it works fine. All right, so the other thing is, I decided I was going to make the other thing that's pretty popular. I don't know if this is a southern thing or if it's all over thing, is peach cobbler. Seems to go with barbecue. So this is on page 10 and 11. I know you guys really like these like 4-page recipes I come up with. So I didn't want to let you down. This one's only 2 pages. All right, so a couple things with a peach cobbler that I've ran into in the past is, again, you go to scoop into it and it starts running. It's not holding together. So I was like, well, all right, how do we fix this? So you'll see on page 10, under the ingredients, it says for the peaches. I'm a fan of, when it comes to peach pie, peach cobbler, this kind of stuff, using the canned peaches. Why? Because it's all year round, they're already tender, and it's going to be consistent versus getting fresh or frozen. If you want to go that route, knock yourself out. This is what I used. It's sliced peaches in 100% juice. You can use the one in heavy syrup if you want. That works too, but I like the juice, which is actually peach juice and pear juice, which is kind of interesting. So you see the brown sugar, nutmeg, cinnamon, butter, and vanilla extract. How many people in here make pies? Oh good, a few of us left. Okay, so does this sound familiar at all? Maybe? This is peach pie filling. So here's the problem if you read online about using canned peaches. They say don't do it because what's going to happen is it's going to add so much moisture into your product, it's going to be a wet mess. So I took a page out of my banana bread recipe, and for example, I will nuke my bananas in the microwave if they're fresh. If they're frozen, you don't have to. You have all this liquid. I strain the liquid, put it in a pan. I used 4 of these for this particular pan of peach cobbler, okay? I had about 3 to 4 cups of juice. If I'd stuck that in here, this thing would be swimming. So I stuck the juice in the frying pan and I reduced it down to 1 cup. So you get evaporation equals concentration. So now you're going to have this amazing fruit syrup kind of from the juice. So I went ahead and then mixed that together after it was reduced. Then I put my peaches back in, and also to help, you notice it says 1/3 cup of cornstarch. So I held back a 1/4 cup of the juice and I mixed the cornstarch with it. So then when I had my peaches and everything in there, if there was anything that was a little bit too loose, when you go to put the cornstarch in there and you mix it for 2 minutes, it's going to go, it's going to pull it all together. It's not going to be running all over. So that's how I handled that. And I do the same thing again with my banana bread. If you think your banana bread's a little bit on the wet side, nuke them in the microwave for 5 minutes. Take the juice, boil it all, put it in a frying pan, just get rid of all that extra moisture, and then your banana bread will be more banana bready, I guess, and won't be as wet. And then for the cobbler base, I know some people do biscuits. There's other ways you can do it. This is kind of like a cake in a way. You melt some butter, throw it in the bottom of the pan. Then you mix up your flour, baking powder. You rub in a little bit of cold butter and your sugar, and the half and half. You make like a batter. You pour that on top of your melted butter. Then you take your peach concoction and you kind of spread it all over. You don't mix anything together, and you throw the whole thing in the oven. And then what's going to happen, as you can see, is that the batter is going to come up through the peaches. And it will hold itself together. It does not run all over, because we've already taken care of the juice ahead of time. So I do the same thing with apple pie. Cook the apples and everything ahead of time so I don't have any problems there. That's another thing that you can do. Again, I like something with the tall sides. We had this. So we've used this a lot for different things. So if you have a deeper pan, I would probably use it for this recipe as well. Just so that way you don't have any issues. I'd rather have a taller pan than spend an hour cleaning this thing because it went, you know what I mean? Yeah, so I think other than that, I think that's all I got for you today. Any questions on?
This is maybe a stupid question. When you nuke the bananas, do you take it out of the skin?
Not a stupid question. So peel the bananas, stick them in like a glass bowl, put plastic wrap on top, take a knife and just punch a couple of holes to release some steam, and then that's it. You're going to be amazed how much liquids come out of bananas. If anybody's ever frozen bananas and then let them thaw, you get this much juice and this much banana. And they turn kind of a weird color. So if you take all that liquid and strain it out and then boil that down to, you get maybe like a cup, I don't know, depends on how much bread you're doing. You might only need a 1/4 cup, you might need a half, whatever it is size. I have these huge bread pans, so I know I need 1 cup. You might only need a 1/4 cup if you're doing a regular like 9x5 pan, normal size. So no, that's not a stupid question at all. So that's how I would handle that.
Hi everyone, my name is Angie, and today I'm going to share 2 of my favorite recipes for barbecue. Are we excited about barbecue today? Yes. Yeah, love barbecue. All right, so our first recipe we're going to be going over is the scrumptious steak fajitas.
What page?
Yep. That is page 12. So for these steak fajitas, these can be adapted to do inside on your stovetop, or you can do them on your grill, or even in just a cast iron outside on one of those fish fryers. You can pick your favorite, and I've done them both ways and they taste just as good. So I started off with a whole beef flank steak. I marinated it for about 5 hours. So it opens up the meat and allows those flavors to mingle and flavor the meat. So you get this really rich flavor without being too overwhelming. So if you marinate your meat too long, it can have the opposite effect of toughening that meat, and then you can't chew it. So it's that fine balance between enough to get those flavors infused in your meat, but too much to be overpowering. So I started with one large onion or 2 smaller onions, 1 bell pepper, red bell pepper, excuse me, an orange bell pepper, a green, yellow, and you can mix and match if you like all green or you like all yellow, more sweeter, whatever you're liking, you can just use whatever you like. So I started off with cutting those up and setting those aside because those are going to go in the marinade as well for the fajitas. So you have your vegetables that are marinated and your meat. And then when I mixed up my marinade, I just put half of it in the Ziploc bag with the meat and half of it in with the vegetables. So we have those commingling flavor profiles. And these were actually done on the grill this morning. We have a propane grill. I don't know if you can see it. This is 2. This is the double pack from Sam's Club. Since we have a big crowd, hungry crowd. And these were grilled, I check them about every 2 to 3 minutes just to make sure that the meat is where we want it to be and desired doneness. So these are the vegetables. I don't know if you can see that. Nice and sauteed. I don't like raw onion. Some people do, some people don't. So these are cooked thoroughly just to make sure that everybody can eat them. So when I go to grill my meat, couple minutes on one side, turn it over, couple minutes on the other side. I check it with a thermometer to make sure that we're not too done or not underdone and just right. And when you take them off the grill, you want to cover them in some aluminum foil and let it rest for about 10-15 minutes. So it allows those juices to stay in your meat and you'll have a juicier piece of meat as well. So these were done, the vegetables were done in a big cast iron skillet. We have a side burner on our grill at home. So I utilize that while the veggies are doing their thing. On the other side, on the actual grill grates, I have my meat. So you can do them both at the same time or you can do them one at a time. I have done this recipe inside, in the kitchen on a big cast iron. You just do it in stages. Sear your meat one piece if you're using 2, and do your vegetables separately. So timing, if you want both to be hot at the same time, you might have to adjust your timing. But this took me probably 45 minutes to cook from start to finish on the grill today. So when you go to cut your meat, you want to cut it against the grain. Because with this cut of meat, it can be kind of tough. So you want it to be as tender as possible. So I cut it in thin slices. So this is about medium. I actually pulled these off about 135 and covered them. So that's what it's going to look like. So when you go to eat these, they come right apart. They just kind of melt in your mouth, kind of goodness. Alrighty. And I've played around with this recipe a little bit. I've added a little paprika or a little red pepper, whatever your taste, whatever you like something spicy, feel free to add it in. And you can serve it on buns, like our wonderful pretzel buns and things that are down at the end there. I can't wait to eat. Or I've put these on salads, made a fajita salad, or just put everything in a bowl and eat it just like that. All right, any questions about that recipe? Yes?
What kind of onions do you use?
Just yellow onion or sweet onion, whatever you choose. Yeah. Yes?
Have you ever thought of this recipe with other vegetables and then just use it as a marinade for baking, like, potatoes or carrots or, something like that? It's just a side dish.
Yep.
It isn't necessarily a fajita.
Yeah, you can just do veggies, absolutely. If you're a vegetarian or just love veggies, you absolutely can add whatever you like to it. I have done this with, I think it's either zucchini or summer squash, and it came out really good too. Yeah.
Have you used it on chicken?
I have not.
Okay. Just wondering.
I have not, but I would love to. Yes.
Also use portobello mushrooms if you don't want the steak. It tastes the same as a steak.
That sounds wonderful. Adding mushrooms to this instead of the steak, or in addition to your other bell peppers and onions? Absolutely. All right, so our second recipe is the pulled pork. So we have the traditional grilled type of style, and then we have a alternative to getting outside with the heat, trying to stand over a hot grill, especially in summer in Florida. We all know it's really hot. So this recipe started with watching my husband stay up all night to babysit a huge smoker that's big as I am. So I'm like, there's got to be a better way. I mean, it's delicious. It's so worth the effort. If you've ever done any smoking, absolutely wonderful. But there's got to be an easier way, time-wise. I could just do something, but still have the benefits of having that delicious meal. So I played around with a couple of recipes and come up with this one. And I know there are some that are similar. You may have tried this before with other things. I've tried it with chicken. I've tried it with pork. Haven't tried it with beef, though. But I have done ribs on occasion, barbecue ribs, and that's for another day. So with this recipe, I add the pork butt or the pork shoulder, whatever you choose. Both of them are great cuts of meat. And I just generously slather that in barbecue sauce. This is our favorite, but you can use any barbecue sauce that you like, sweet, savory, whatever you like. The key to get that barbecue flavor profile is use liquid smoke. Now you can't overdo this, so in this whole crock pot there's only 2 tablespoons. That's it. If you're doubling a recipe, this is only a 7-pound pork butt roast that we got here. Sometimes I'll double that, really fills up, but it's so worth having those leftovers. They're fantastic. So yeah, this recipe is great to scale it up or scale it down depending on how many people you're trying to feed and how much leftovers you want to. And then as you're probably noticing, I always use my liners. It's just easier cleanup for me. Just easy peasy, 1, 2, 3, done. And then so this has been cooking for 8 hours. And now it's on low. Yeah. So I did this one on high, because I wanted to make sure with timing to have it done for you all today to try. So when it's done, I just take it apart with a couple of, it easily falls apart. Literally tender, juicy. And halfway through, I like to turn it. So when I'm making that recipe, you'll have a big hunk of meat like this. I cut it up in a couple pieces, so that way it cooks thoroughly. If you ever put in like a big piece of meat and it's raw in the middle or just not getting to where you want, then the outside gets too cooked, so you got that too much, too less thing. So I found that if I cut those up in smaller chunks, like about the size of my hand, then that actually helps it to cook more evenly. So halfway through the cooking time, I'll actually turn those pieces over just to make sure that it's all cooking evenly and delicious. And then you can serve that on rolls. You can eat it by the forkful. Great on salads. We've done that before. Pork tacos, however you like to enjoy. Any questions about this recipe? All right. Thank you. Yes?
So when you buy your pork shoulder, that's boneless?
This one is boneless. This is the pork butt roast. Normally, a lot of times I use the pork bone-in shoulder and just trim off the pieces. There. So you can use both. Both are just as good.
Hi, my name is Lily Solano, and I made the quinoa salad. How familiar are you with quinoa? Oh, good to know, only a few of you. A couple of years ago, it was so hard to find the quinoa. I went to Publix and I asked for quinoa, and they said, what? I spelled it, and I feel like I was asking for hot ice cream or purple bananas or something that did not exist. But say that again?
Try asking for Knish at Cobbler, see what you get.
No, now they have it. In fact, I bought this in Walmart. This is the 2-pounder, and it costs about $7 or $8. And then Aldi's has the 1-pounder, and both of them are organic. Now, because I was told that there's 68 people here, I doubled the recipe. So you better eat it, because I'm not gonna eat. I'm not gonna eat it the whole week at home if you don't eat it. Okay, and there is a little sign there. Now, I tend to cook with little salt, so I brought a little salt here in case you need some more. Okay, let me see. So the recipe is on page 6. Okay, so always the back of, you follow the back of for the boiling, and I usually do it the night before, so I give it enough time to cool off, and this morning I do the chopping and whatever else it needs, and of course it says like many things. Well, by the way, quinoa is not it's a seed. It's not a grain. It's a seed of the what is the name of this goose food plant, whatever that is. And because the seeds are so tiny, and you have to wash it really good, I use this kind of calendars. Nothing goes through. And what I was going to say. Oh, and it says just wash it because it may have like foreign material. But it's more than that. When you really, really wash it, you are going to see that the water comes kind of yellowish, because the plant of the quinoa is protected by this a thing called saponin. So the insects will not get them, or let me see exactly what it says. It may give it a bitter taste if you don't wash it thoroughly. Let me see. And this is very friendly, because if you don't have one thing, you can use something else. For example, when I went yesterday or the day before shopping for all the vegetables, I couldn't find the celery, so I got cucumber. So if you don't have the one color of the peppers, you can use the other color. Colors are important too, not only because they look very nice, but I'm not a nutritionist, but I understand the colors have to do a lot with nutrition. Let me see. Chopped garlic cloves, olive oil. I use the lime juice. I'm South American, so I always prefer the lime as opposed to the lemon. Let me see. Oh, something that doesn't say in the package, when you cook it, when it's cooked, fluffy like rice, fluffy with a big fork, because otherwise it get lumps. And again, I did it. It's been in the refrigerator overnight, but it's supposed to be served at room temperature. So because it's been here sitting for a little bit, I think the temperature is going to be perfect for when we eat it. Let's see. Okay, I have to read this part because it says, actually, this is a super seed full of nutrients. It's gluten-free, a natural food, not genetically modified, excellent source of protein and fiber. In addition, it has anti-inflammatory properties. It lowers cholesterol, blood glucose, and also cancer risks. So it has a number of things that you may be interested in giving a try. And it says that this food, I wasn't born that early, but it says this food has been around for about 6,000 years. And because it's so good and so strong, and it has all this and that. Maybe that's why the dinosaurs were so big and so strong, because they ate quinoa. Okay, so that's just about it. If you have any question, I may have an answer.
Have you made it a lot?
The 2 pounds.
No, just in general.
Oh, actually, it's one of my favorite friends' things. So whenever I am invited for a potluck dinner or so, they ask me, bring your quinoa salad. So no, sometimes I bring more, but it's always empty bowl that I take home, and that's what I like. Because this doesn't get made in 15 minutes. It takes at least a couple of hours. So if it's worth for me to do it, it's worth for you to try it.
Hi, my name is Kim. Just brought this simple recipe in. It's I make sweet kraut instead of sauerkraut. So I have 2 dishes I brought for anyone who's a vegetarian. It's chicken sausage with peppers in it, red and green bell peppers, with my sweet kraut. And this one over here is pork sausage with also the sweet kraut in it. It's got extra cheddar cheese in it. So if anyone wants to try the sweet kraut, there's a little bowl of it, and then here's the sausage and chicken. And that's about it. I just cut up a head of cabbage. I did the purple cabbage this time. Sometimes it's white. I just fry it in a frying pan with lots of butter and brown sugar. I just keep sauteing it until it's cooked up and browned. And if it's not enough brown sugar, if it's not sweet enough, I just add more. I added probably at least a cup, maybe more, of brown sugar and 2 sticks of butter. And that's it. It's really simple. A whole head. I did a whole head. A whole head of cabbage. It's a whole head, yeah. Okay, so that's about it. It is not in there. It's not. I just winged it and just, yeah.
Is it
Yes.
a family recipe?
It is my recipe.
Oh, it's yours.
Yes.
Is it passed on through your
No.
family, or is this yours?
Just mine, and my kids, all my kids love it, yeah. For someone who doesn't like sauerkraut, I always just done sweet kraut. So, that's it. No, it's perfect. It's a really good fragrance. I did smell it to see if I smelled it, if it was too soury, I added more brown sugar. So it's to your adjustment, so whatever you like.
Hello, I'm back. I bought a watermelon salad because I thought it was gonna be refreshing, outside. And it's just watermelon, blueberries. I brought the recipes, feta cheese, and basil. And you drizzle lemon on it. That's it. Toss them together, and that's it. For the ones that like spicy stuff, I bought tahini. You can just sprinkle it on it, and it's really good.